Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast, Season 4. This podcast is for and about people getting ready for their first ever pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, Camino guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. What if something happens at home while you are away on a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela? What do you do when someone you love is in trouble, hundreds or thousands of miles away? My guest today is going to share her real-life experience with that very thing. In this episode, you are going to meet Natalie from Portland, Oregon in the U.S. Her Camino story has, well, at least two parts. One that has already happened, and one that will happen in 2025. We will get to Natalie's story in a few minutes. Hi, this is Nancy, coming to you from Zubiri on the Francés route of the Camino de Santiago, where my May Camino Experience group is staying on day 3 of their journey on this holy road. We started in Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port, France on May 12th, and we will arrive in Pamplona tomorrow. From Pamplona, these beautiful pilgrims will continue on without me to make their way to Santiago and whatever Camino experiences are to come. Their pilgrimages began a while back. Some would say the moment they said yes to walking the Camino, and more specifically when they joined this group and we started preparing together for the journey. Some of us have been together since last September, meeting monthly, emailing regularly, and taking one step at a time together to get ready and get started on the trail. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm already looking ahead to next year, to when I will lead groups in 2025. I have my sights set on April, May, and September next year. And I already have 5 people on the wait list for the May group. So this is an invitation. If you are leaning towards walking the Camino on your own, at your own pace, and you would like some expert assistance to get started, and you would like to take your first steps on the trail with me and a small group of pilgrims, I would like to hear from you so I can begin setting those dates for 2025. The wait lists are open for all groups next year, and you can let me know you're interested by going to my website. The links are in the show notes, but my website is pretty easy to remember. It's thecaminoexperience.com. And then when you get to the website, look for the menu tab called Walk With Me. You'll find the way there to let me know you're interested in joining a group for next year. The other thing I'm looking forward to is launching my next group coaching program for pilgrims who can't or don't want to meet up on the trail and walk together for the first 4 days. This program is largely a do-it-yourself program, but with 6 group coaching calls to guide you through the planning process. That's the plus part. Same website, thecaminoexperience.com. Look for the DIY Camino menu tab. If you're listening to this episode a while after its release date, well, it might sound like this stuff has already happened. So do be sure to go to my website for all the current start dates and availability. Okay, now let's meet Natalie. From a difficult childhood to early motherhood and 3 fabulous now adult children, Natalie is going to share with us her take on what it means to be vulnerable and manage the perception of being selfish as she prepares to walk the Camino de Santiago. Here we go. Natalie, hi. Thank you so much for being with me on the podcast.
Hi, Nancy.
Well, gosh, I've just been looking forward to this ever since you sent me your request, and I noticed what a significant story you have and a history that you're taking to the Camino and your reasons for going, just seeking what's next in sort of a sort of an up and down journey along the way.
Mhm.
And so I'm eager to hear what you want to share about that. And we should, of course, start by putting the pin in the map and talking about, well, and this was also interesting. You have a bit of a Camino experience already,
I do.
and then we'll take that and look towards the future. So, will you start by telling us about your first trip to the Camino?
Okay, so my first trip to the Camino, I've thought about this, and a few years back, my sister reached out, and so to back up a little bit more, we are both, I call us survivors of an alcoholic home. Both my parents were pretty heavy drinkers and emotionally unavailable and or abusive. So my sister reached out wanting to talk more about it and connect with me. And, I think a lot of times we know like our siblings, we kind of are together, but sometimes we drift apart and then we come back together. And this was her reaching out saying, I think I'm ready to connect with my little sister over what happened.
Wow.
So we spent some time talking through that, and she all of a sudden decides she's moving to Portugal. So to kind of fast forward a little bit in our journey of healing, she moves to Portugal and she's like, okay, I found out about this thing called the Camino. And I think it would be great for you to take as much time as you can off work and come spend some time with me. And we can take as long or as fast as we need to start and continue that healing journey.
So, what was it that made it look like the Camino would do that for you? Take you along that healing path.
So for her, I'm not sure. For me, for example, my daughter, I have three kids, a 30-year-old, a 27-year-old, and a 17-year-old. My 27-year-old, when she graduated from high school, she said to me, Mom, I want to do the Camino and I want to do it by myself. And I just kind of, as a mom, was like, oh, cool, you're going to go to Europe and backpack around. So I started reading some on that and I was like, oh, that would be really neat to do later in life. This
Mm.
was 10 years ago. And I kept thinking later in life, getting close to retirement, I could do that. Her as a young woman, go do it. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. I'm like, do you want me to give you an airline ticket for this?
Right. Feels like a graduation present to me. Go.
Right. She didn't take it, though I offered it. But anyway, so that for to me, when my sister suggested, I thought, I've heard about this before. Like, maybe that is a good idea. And, when you get away from life and the home and the husbands and the children, you can connect better with people.
Mm.
And, I just saw that being out in the middle of, I know you're in the middle of somewhere, but in the middle of nowhere for us people in the US, it would give us a chance to just kind of leave all that stuff behind us
Yeah, good.
and move together forward, which is what we
Mm.
really needed to do.
Oh, yeah. It's such a beautiful way to put it.
Mhm.
All right. So back to the story.
Yeah, back to the story. So I get over to Portugal, and this is where, we're excited. I went through the whole thing of figuring out what's going to go in the backpack, the blisters on the feet, all of those types of things. And we start our journey out of Porto. So we were going up the coastal way, which is absolutely beautiful in October. I will tell you that
Oh,
right now, those
yes.
beaches are amazing. And yes, I could live my whole life where my sister lives right now. And we started out at Porto on a Tuesday and spent the day, walked, did what you're doing, met some people from Canada, went to dinner, stayed in a really cute little private accommodations, not, the public ones, but just the private little one.
Mhm.
And then the next day on Wednesday, we got head back out early. I think the sun hadn't even come up. And this is where it's going to get hard. We and we were watching the sunset. So the day went by. It was really hot that day, but beautiful trails that we were walking. And I got a phone call from my husband. and he couldn't find our son.
Mm.
And so I, being 5,000 miles away, panicked and
Sure.
started thumbing through my phone and realized that my son was having a mental health emergency and we were going to lose him. So, you know, in the moment, I don't know where I was. I don't know if I was on a beach in Portugal or if my whole body had just left
Mhm.
where I was right then in that moment. Panic obviously overcame me, and I thank God that in that moment I was with my sister, even though I was so far away
Yeah.
from my home and my son and my baby. Having my sister there comforted me so much. And I remember her saying, "What is it that we need to do?" And it wasn't, "What do you need to do?" It wasn't, "Oh, go deal with this on your own." It was, "What do you need from me for us to get you through this?" And I was like, "I need to go home."
Yeah.
And then the realization was, well, wait, and I got to get an airline ticket and I have to pack my bag and I have to do all these things. And, we had dropped our backpacks off at a, not a hotel, at a house, and we had to get back to it. So it was just this panic.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing to me in that moment. I had my sister, we started walking back to where the backpacks were. Again, another nice private establishment. And we walked in, threw our stuff together. I had wet clothes in a sink and, just everything everywhere. And we let the woman know that we were leaving, and the host. And she was probably one of the sweetest people I met on my journey home. She didn't speak very much English. She definitely was Portuguese. And she was very worried that something was wrong with the accommodations. And, it wasn't.
That's where they go first. Is there something I can fix?
What's wrong? I will fix this. And we were like, no, 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 no. We're having a family emergency. And she looked at me and she got tears in her eyes. Now, this was a woman who knew nothing of what was going on, but she saw my face and she said, "Do you need me to call you a taxi cab so we can get you to the airport?"
I bet she was a mother too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we didn't tell her what went on, but as soon as we said it was a family emergency, she looked probably as grief stricken as I did. And she's like, "I will call someone right now to help." And it was, to me, the beginning of a journey of finding a lot of little angels who helped me get home, who have helped me over the last few months to be able to mentally support my son, who is fine. He's,
Thank God. Thanks for that.
yeah,
Thanks for saying that.
yes, he's fine. It's, mental health is a huge thing. And, I think my sister and our journey was to help with some of our mental health issues, growing up in a home with alcoholics. There's not a lot of support there. And, long story short, I did get home. I met another lovely woman on the airplane who was just as sweet and let me sit there and cry with her, like another complete stranger. But, the last few months have been a lot of therapy for both of us.
Okay.
He needs to get well. It kind of threw me into getting the therapy that I've needed over the last, let's just say, 50 years.
Oh, just 50. Yeah, just 50. Yeah.
And just
Snuck
50,
up on me.
right? Like, oh, just 50 years of
Yeah.
baggage.
Wow, that is so courageous, Natalie.
It's amazing. I haven't realized how much I've internalized everything.
Mm.
And it's making, I'm going to do this Camino with my sister. This will happen. And I think that going through what I'm going through now is just going to help that healing process that my sister and I have to look forward to in the future.
Oh,
Probably sometime next year,
yeah.
we're going to get our little backpacks on and start all over. And, I did jokingly said, I'm like, I'm probably going to bring my son with me because
It's such a poignant and moving story. And I would imagine that this is touching the heartstrings of some of my listeners who are parents and who have this concern that what do I do if something happens while I'm away? How do I respond? How do I take care of myself? How do I take care of my children from afar? And
Mhm.
so there's the practical thing that you had to address, which is get yourself home as quickly as possible. And then there's this emotional thing, untethered in the wind, with your mother's heart just crumbling.
Right. Right. And I will say, not only did we have someone offer help to get me to the airport, which eh, I don't know, to me was just unheard of.
Mm.
I was able to find an airline ticket and be home in less than 24 hours.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
really glad that I was home because unfortunately, the whole way home, I thought everyone was lying to me. And I really thought there was something wrong with him, that I was going to get home to not having a child.
Oh, wow.
So he, to add this into it, he drove his truck off a 25-foot cliff. He broke his ankle.
That's it.
That's it. He had some, scrapes on his face.
Uh-huh.
Like again, another angel, like real angel, was with that child.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, carrying me along the way to get me home to make sure that he was all right.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I understand there are concerns as parents.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going on a journey, if you're going to work,
Yes.
the last few years with COVID has been really challenging, not only for us adults, but our children who've had to navigate through this. It's been terrible for them.
Yeah, it's just brand new. And that's the thing, you remind me. I don't have children, and so I don't have that perspective, and I know that I don't have that perspective. And so all I can do is imagine that I would be a terrible parent. I'd be a helicopter mom because I would be terrified that something would happen to my child. And I honestly, I look at parents and I think, how are you still standing after raising a child through the stress of worrying about them? But then also the other side of it is the joy and awe and wonder of being a parent to a magnificent human being. I think that would make my heart explode. I just, what you do, I have so much respect for parents.
I was a young mom. I was a mom right out of high school.
Okay.
And, I remember thinking, oh, terrible. Like this is ruining everything. And it probably came partly from what some other people were telling me, which
Sure.
was an absolute lie.
Ah,
Like I love being a mother. They are the most amazing things. And I love being an aunt. Maybe you can relate to being an aunt.
that I
Like
can.
you can watch those children be these little things that you carry around with you, and they turn into these adults that they're all so different. I've got 3 kids, like I mentioned, and every one of them contribute a little bit something different to how my heart feels every single day. Like they are absolutely amazing, and I am so proud of the humans I've raised and am still raising. I mean, I think once they turn 18, you're still raising them until the day you die, and
The
then
job is never done, is
it's
it?
never done. And I think even after that, hopefully you've planted enough seeds in them that they can look back and be like my mom.
Beautiful.
It's wonderful. I love it. And I know it's not for everyone. It is definitely a challenge.
Oh, it's a big job. It's such a big job. I think mothers should just go to the front of the line in heaven if there were a line and if it were a physical place. I think you need to be at the front of the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hats off. Wow. So I'm just imagining being in Portugal and getting that phone call and just the waves of emotions that go through you. And if you had to pass on words of wisdom to other pilgrims who are heading to the Camino and have concerns, maybe there's some pre-existing conditions that they're worried about with their children, or just the general worried about being away from their children, whatever age they are. What advice could you offer them?
Hmm. think I think sitting down and explaining what your journey is about. And I'm not going to say I failed, but I didn't talk too much about that. Like, oh, I was just going to go visit my sister. And I think that, we often forget to be vulnerable in our lives. And for whatever reason your Camino is, I'm just speaking from mine. Being transparent with people, I know that as a parent, we're afraid of that because we don't want to look vulnerable. We don't want to seem like we're weak. And, what I have learned is that it's okay to be weak. It's okay to share in what your concerns are, what scares you, especially when you have older children. When they're little, it's something different, but you're protecting a little bit differently than you do with essentially, adult children. So having those conversations, if it's with your parent or with your children or with your spouse or with a friend, saying, this is why I'm going on this journey. And maybe this journey is just to go have fun, go do it. I know there are a lot of pilgrims out there who are going with intention of a bad marriage, of corporate life, of, whatever it might be. But to be transparent to those people that you love and make sure that they know why you are going on this journey.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Some of us who don't have children could take something away from that as well. Just in general, to let the people we love know why we're doing it. And to also recognize that not everybody will understand it or offer the support that we need. And so maybe to choose those audiences carefully.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I've definitely tried to be vulnerable and transparent with some people, and then it's failed on me and it's made me feel worse than
Yeah.
I began with, which that's not the intention of
That's
being
not the goal.
transparent. No, transparency is to make everybody feel good and unified, not, competing against each other.
Yeah. We're looking to connect here.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
think, like I mentioned earlier, I met a woman from Canada. She was great. And the only reason why she was on the Camino is because she just retired and she took 5 years off of her life, though retirement, I figured that's
Synonymous, right?
no, right. But she decided as a Canadian, she was going to go to Europe and she put everything she owned into storage. And she was saying that her children thought she was crazy.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe she is, and who cares?
Right. I want her craziness.
I know. I know. You know what? I did that. How old was I when I did? I was 32 when I did that the first time. Yeah. No regrets. Talk about
No.
the joy of leaving the corporate world.
Right. Well, and look at you now.
I don't know how this happened, but I do. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing so authentically about what that was for you and what you see as how to move through those things and how to um, really keep your family involved in it and take it to the place that you need to take it to. Yeah. So, if you don't mind, shall we go talk about the future now and what your Camino plans are?
Absolutely.
All right. What do you have planned and why?
Well, why is because I need to finish what I started.
There you go.
That's one thing that I think, we have to remember that when you do start things, if they're to benefit you, just keep going, even if, you know, uh, something changed your journey. To me, that was an extension of my journey
Okay.
with what happened with my son. So, thinking of the future, sometime next year, I will be heading back to Portugal to my sister's home, and, that'll be our base there in Porto. And we will move on through our journey to Santiago, which I can't wait.
Very good. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the meaning of this journey for you, if you wouldn't mind talking more about that.
For me, I've not had a whole lot of time to stop and pause for myself.
I bet. Mother of three. Yeah.
So, mother of three, I'm, like I said, around 50 years old. I've been a mom for 31 years. And I got thrown right into having to work and be a wife and doing those types of things. Back in October, this was really for my 50th birthday, was to get out, not only to connect with my sister, but have some time by myself. So that's really what this is about. And I feel super selfish, but not at the same time. I think as a woman, we neglect that we are an independent individual, that,
Mm.
yeah, we're moms and that defines part of us, but it's not who we are 100% of the time. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and the mindset I have to on this journey is to take some time for me, maybe realize something about myself.
Well, and I think travel brings out those things anyway. And then the Camino is a very unique way of traveling
Yeah.
to slow down to the pace of walking. You almost can't avoid what's going on inside your heart and your mind because there's lots of time for it to surface and to tap you on the shoulder and say, I have something to tell you. Yeah.
Well, and I will say in those 2 days that I was out there, that definitely started to happen. I
Yeah.
think, the 2 days, it was just kind of like, oh, here I am. But I could tell that it was like, okay, if I keep doing this a few more days, there's going to be a lot of things that surface up about me.
Yeah. Any concerns about that? Any trepidation?
No, I think I'm ready for that part. I've like I said, I've battled some things for 50 years, and I think it's time for those things to surface up and just, maybe leave on the road. I don't need to keep carrying this baggage with me anymore.
Exactly. I have an image that I use when there's something that I want to let go of. And I actually imagine myself throwing it over my shoulder behind me, just throwing it all. Okay, that can go. We're going to get rid of that. And, I'm not always smiling when I'm doing it. Sometimes I'm, yark, yark,
Mhm.
cussing and I don't cuss. Yes, I do. But, just like really chewing on it and spitting it out and throwing it over my shoulder. Yeah.
That's funny because I have an image of a suitcase that's overflowing, that you open up and you're like, okay, I see what's bothering this, pull it out and get rid of it. But it's an
Excellent.
unpacking of a suitcase. And that's, basically how I feel like I'm going to do this when I have the opportunity to do it in the way it's in my mind, is that I'm going to unpack some stuff out of that suitcase so it's easier to travel with.
That's a great image. Yeah, great image. I appreciate that. So I would love to talk a little bit more about the concept of being selfish. It's something that gets really ingrained into us that we should not be selfish. But I'm curious, how do we take care of ourselves if it's not being selfish? How do we pull that apart? Any thoughts on that?
That's really a great question, and I don't know.
Mm.
To be honest with you, I've spent a whole life worrying about what everybody else has been absorbed with, that I don't know what's selfish. I mean, to me, going and get my hair cut is selfish, which is silly because I need
Mm,
haircuts.
right. That's basic self care.
Right.
So it seems like there's sort of a continuum.
hmm
Yeah. And
I
then,
like that self-care. And maybe that's more what it should be called, and not selfish. It's
mm,
self-care.
mhm,
But, I mean, we all have grown up where little things can be called selfish. The people around, oh, well, that's selfish. When maybe
mhm.
it's not. Maybe it's just me saying, I need this for myself.
Or maybe selfish isn't always bad.
Right.
Yeah. To really claim that and say, I'm going to take responsibility for having what I need. I hear that from moms a lot is the sacrifice and the time that goes towards caring for your children and not paying attention to what you need.
And we get lost in that.
Mm.
We get lost in being a mom and a wife and a worker. And we forget what it's like to be Natalie or Nancy or Meredith or whomever. We
Yeah.
forget those things because it's not what our society tells us we're supposed to do.
Yeah. And in that, being a mom and being a wife or a partner is a very honorable way to live your life. We need good partners and good parents. people who are really attending to raising our children because they're going to be running the show.
They will be.
Yeah. So hats off
And
to
it
you.
is honorable. All of those things are honorable. It's just, to me, sometimes those roles get forgotten about the most when we need our moms to be well taken care of.
Yeah. Let's not underestimate the power of mothering.
Right. Like
Oh,
we can do a lot. And I think
yeah.
that's women. Women are pretty phenomenal in my mind.
I'm going to cheer for that statement. Yay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, very good. All right. So plans are not set, but they are in the emotion on the emotional calendar. So
Yes.
it will be happening in 2025.
Mhm.
And I'd love to hear how you plan to prepare or any what's on the horizon when the walk is that far out.
One thing that I realized is there's a lot of hills in Porto. Getting out of the city was probably the worst part of it because you're probably familiar. It's very coastal.
I love Porto.
Oh, it's beautiful. I think I think I need to exercise more of going up and down stairs. We don't have a lot of hills around here.
Okay.
So, and this was even me a year ago, maybe, 10 months ago, trying to figure out what do I do to prepare like physically. I don't think it really matters because you'll get to where you need to go. But for me, I think just to have a little bit more strength would be great.
Yes.
So that's the physical part. I think I packed my bag really good. My pack was only about 11 pounds.
That's great.
Yeah. So I figured there were stores along the way. And if I needed anything, I could find it.
Definitely true.
So I don't think I need to change anything there. And I think it's just the mental aspect of it too. I had a glimpse of what it was going to be like. So, I'm a little more ahead of people who've never embarked on it before.
Right.
But I think the mental aspect of it, our first day was 7, 8 hours of walking, which was great. And then I woke up the next morning and I was like, I'm tired. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's a
this is
lot.
only day two.
Yeah. Are we there yet?
Right. No, I wasn't quite there, but in that pack. So I think just that there's mental part of the physical
Mm.
that you will
Hmm.
feel.
Hmm.
And I think it's just preparing for that. I think, I need to do some trial runs with my pack on, which I didn't do.
That's a great idea for
Yeah.
a couple reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that, I do know that I need to figure out some blister stuff because that I could never get away from. I have a area of my foot that always gets a blister. I could walk anywhere and it's going to
It
be a blister.
sort of the resident blister.
Right. So I feel like that's what some of my planning will be. I think I'll start some of that physical once the weather gets better. Hopefully it'll stop raining here in Portland soon.
Uh, uh, do you really think that'll happen?
No, but it'll get warmer.
It'll get warmer. I know we've been having so much rain in Northern California, well, Southern California as well. But yeah, and some days I use this as an excuse. Oh, I can't go walk. It's raining. And then I look at myself and I go, okay, you're a guide and you're helping people get ready for the Camino. What would you tell them if it's raining? Put on your rain gear and go test it out. One
Well,
of these days I'll take my own advice.
that's funny because I was thinking the same thing. And I was like, well, what do I need to do? I'm like, well, it's raining. And I'm like, well, wait, it's probably going to rain on me when I'm over there. So I might as well just go get in the rain.
It will, exactly. So the thing about training's a funny thing. And it gets asked a lot. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups about the Camino, and people ask about training and how much should I train and all of that. And, the bottom line is if you train, you'll enjoy the walk more, the physical
Mhm.
part of the walk more than if you push yourself on the trail.
With the training that I did do, I was walking about 6 to 10 miles a day. And I did that for about a week
Fantastic.
or so, but I never did it with a pack on.
Okay, that's the
And I think that
difference.
was the key is, it's one thing to take, little old me and walk around for, a few hours. It's
Yes.
different if you put 11, 15, 20 pounds on your back, right?
Yeah. I have lots of thoughts on training. I have to train as well
Mhm.
because my first 4 days on the trailer from Saint Jean Pied du Port with my group. And I really don't want to be the last one up the hill because I'm the last one up the hill. I want to be the last one up the hill because I'm sweep and making sure everyone else gets over. So, yeah, I'm going to go train some more between now and the next 6 weeks.
Well, good.
So, I want to ask you to imagine
Okay.
you are in Santiago de Compostela.
Mhm.
You've just completed the walk from Porto.
Mhm.
What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Well, that's what, a couple hundred miles. I
Yeah.
think I think there'll be a mix of emotions. I think there's going to be an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I don't want to put anything else with this because my intent the first time was a certain way, and now I'm bringing more with me. I just want to say that it'll be a sense of accomplishment. I know there will be tears because it will be a great place to get to, but I also don't want to like build it up in my head and be disappointed.
I think that's wise. Yeah.
Right. So, I'm excited. I think it'll be fun. But like I said, I think there'll be a sense of accomplishment, and that no matter how it goes, will definitely be there.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you to also imagine you leaving something on the trail. What would you like to leave behind on the trail and not bring back home with you?
So that second day that I was with my sister, originally we were doing this to talk about our childhood. We woke up in the morning and she's further in the healing journey from our childhood than I am. And she asked me, "How would you describe our childhood or your childhood?" And I was like, "Oof, that's a loaded question."
It's a brave question to
Yeah.
ask.
And she said, "I want one word, just one." And I was like, "Okay." So I, walked for a few minutes and I told her, I said, "Lonely." I said, "Every part of our childhood, my childhood was lonely." And hers was insignificant.
Oh, wow.
And so, we both stood there, in the middle of the dark, crying on a bridge somewhere. I'm hoping to leave my loneliness there. And I know between now and then I'm got a lot of therapy that I'm going through, but I'm hoping that I'll come to a realization that I'm not alone and that I can find these wonderful people around me and just take a little bit of their, I don't know, spirit or, energy home with me so I don't feel so lonely all the time.
I so appreciate that answer. Thanks for being so open.
Yeah, we need to be open, right?
Yeah.
If you want to heal, you need to be open. And I know that's a real, I'm calling the kettle black right now. That's a really hard thing to have to do is be vulnerable, like I said earlier. And that's,
Absolutely.
you have to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's with yourself.
Yeah, and I think we know that intellectually, but to actually bridge the gap between what you know and being that and doing that, that's a hard leap.
Mhm.
And sometimes we just don't have the roadmap for it. So to get help, that's courageous to
Mhm.
say, I'm going to get some guidance in how to navigate that path. Yeah. Mm. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
It brings up a question for me of the difference between loneliness and being alone or feeling alone. And I don't know if that's too broad and deep of a topic to tackle, but it's something that I've questioned too because I do experience loneliness in the midst of crowds and in the midst of even on the Camino, I'm often lonely. So it's sort of an interesting question. Any thoughts on loneliness versus alone?
I think there's different degrees.
Mhm.
You know, living alone. you're going to be alone. You're going to feel a little lonely.
Mhm.
And, that's one thing. And you can overcome that by maybe a trip to the grocery store, right? or getting your favorite book out and, losing yourself in that.
Yeah.
I think there's also, the depression, loneliness that people feel of there's no one here for me or, any of that. And there's also, the traumatic lonely that you get from not having supportive people around you. And, those are things that you can work on.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like I say unfortunately way too much, but we don't give people that. We don't educate them. And, it's okay to be depressed, but there's people out there to help you.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Mm.
that's a pretty broad topic, Nancy.
It is a broad topic.
I mean, loneliness is a hard one because I felt lonely my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's hard.
Yeah. I relate to it. It's
Yeah.
really, for me, it seems to be very closely connected to being vulnerable and an inability to be vulnerable.
Well, yeah, because I've always felt like you don't want to be inferior.
Mm.
And loneliness is part of being inferior.
Very deep conversation. Wow. I so appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you, Natalie, for feels like bravely tackling a topic that probably many of us do struggle with.
Mhm. Yeah. Like I said, talk about it. If you're feeling it, you should be able to talk about it. And like I said, I'm probably not a good example of that. I mean, people are probably like, now they never talked about her feelings. But I'm trying to get better.
Yeah. Well, it's one step at a time and it does need a safe audience.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or be willing to thicken your skin so that when it doesn't land well, you go, okay, next, let me move on.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. It's a personal topic for me as well. So anyway, I so appreciate knowing your story and you being willing to share your story. And I want to just move into the next part, which is
Okay.
where I just ask if there are any questions I can answer for you about the Camino or about getting ready.
I don't think so. I've done a lot of research on this because I had planned it.
Yeah.
I will say that your podcasts are wonderful. Just
Thank you.
giving you some kudos. So you answer a lot of questions in those. So if people
Great.
have the time to listen through them, you're going to learn a lot.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. I love sharing information about the Camino. And I love it when it can be tied to a conversation like this, when somebody actually has things on their mind already or questions that they've been pondering. And there's so much information out there about the Camino. It's not hard to get your questions answered. There's just so many of them to get answered. So
Yeah.
one step at a time. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, not at this point. I mean, come back in a year, maybe
Right?
18 months, and I'll have another story to tell you.
Well, I think we should catch you after you walk the Camino and hear how that went.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.